My thought today is that you can retain both. You can have a high quality report on one side and be efficient at what you do.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
What's up, my brothers and sisters? Welcome back to the Appraiser Coach Podcast. Dustin Harris hanging out with you. Whenever I do an episode like this, I've always got a caveat because people take snippets and they take quotes and they take them out of context. Please listen to the entire episode. I hope that this will be one of the most important podcasts that you will listen to this year, especially if you are struggling with the topic on the table, and that is, why am I so slow in doing appraisal work? I want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by a company that will allow you to be quick with your appraisal work, and that is Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the sponsor here at the Appraiser Coach Podcast, and you can check them out by going to alamode.com or 800 Alamode. OREP Insurance is protecting you. They've got your back. Check them out by going to orep.org. Again, it's orep.org. Folks, I want to start by telling you where this episode is coming from. I just got off a coaching call this morning that I thought was very productive. And it is a topic and a subject that comes up frequently when I am doing coaching. And it comes down to, well, it comes down to many things, but one of the things that it comes down to is individuals who look at their situation and compare themselves to others, which is never a good thing, right? One of the things I don't like about Facebook is we see all of these great things that people are doing out there, and we think, my gosh, my life is so boring. I mean, look at these people. They're traveling to Europe and they're going boating and they're doing this and that and the other, and I don't do any of that fun stuff. And so we tend to get in this mode of comparing ourselves to others, which is, of course, never a good thing. But if it pushes us to be a little bit better and it pushes us to increase our ability to be successful, maybe it's not such a bad thing. Again, got off a coaching call that I thought was very productive. And it basically started with, it was an all-star team member. And the all-star team member had been seeing my numbers. I'm not going to share the numbers here with you today. Honestly, again, the purpose of this podcast is to give you information that I think will be helpful to you in your day-to-day appraisal work. And I don't want to get distracted. If I threw out numbers, I'm going to get criticism, right? But in the all-star team, I share numbers. We're sharing success. We're sharing things that will help fellow appraisers to do what we need to do. And one of the things that I share with my clients is my numbers, and specifically the amount of time that it typically, and again, that's an average, but typically takes to do certain things. Okay. So how long does it take to input an order? How long does it take typically to schedule an appointment? How long does an appointment typically take? How long does it take to choose comparables or make adjustments or reconciliation? Or how long does it, on average, take us to do a typical 1004 from start to finish? And there's a definitive number there. Again, it's an average. There are exceptions. Some will go faster. Some will go much slower, depending on the problem at hand. And when I say the problem, I mean the appraisal problem at hand, whatever you are working on. But there is a bigger problem when you throw out numbers like that. Sometimes individuals will step back and they'll say, well, Dustin says that on average in his office, it takes X amount of minutes or X amount of hours to do a certain thing. And it's taking me twice that long or 3 times that long. And I want to get better. And back to the story at hand, this is what the coaching call was mostly about. It started out with something else, but that's where we diverted. And she specifically said, Dustin, I'm struggling because I'm looking at your numbers and they're not my numbers. And honestly, the biggest problem that she's having is keeping up, right? Many people out there right now are not having problem keeping up. They're having problems with volume. Where's the volume, Dustin? Where's the appraisal work that I was doing in 2021? It's gone, and I need more of it. But some individuals are struggling. And by the way, this is not an uncommon issue that I have dealt with in my coaching career. It comes up frequently, and I have some answers, and I have some things that I think will be helpful to you. So stay tuned. But the bigger problem here is that some appraisers are taking way too long to do their appraisal work, whether it be choosing comps, whether it be adjustments, reconciliation. Now, here's where I have to pause a little bit, back myself up, and give credence to those that are going to criticize, right? The Bill Johnsons of the world who talk about Dustin Harris, who just rushes through his appraisal reports and gets 6,000 appraisals done in a day and blah, blah, blah. And he just loves to go off on that kind of thing. By the way, Bill, I'm still waiting for you to come on my appraisal coach podcast. Would love to have you as a guest, but unfortunately, you're going to have to use your real name when you get here. But it's this idea of people want to give good quality work to their clients, and hallelujah, praise heavens, that's exactly what you should be doing, right? What's going to keep you in business long term is that kind of an attitude. It's this ability to be able to do your work with a high quality and to be proud of your work. But there is this balance, if you will. There is this thing that you have to look at and compare what I call the quality and efficiency balance, right? So on one hand, I would never in a million years encourage you to cut corners. You need to give high quality work, right? And unfortunately, there were a few appraisers, maybe more than a few, during the height of the pandemic that were, I mean, there's no other way to say it, cutting corners. They had so much work coming in that they were struggling to keep their nose above water. And unfortunately, they made a critical error. That critical error is that they sacrificed the quality of their work in order to get more appraisals out the door. They chose efficiency over quality. And consequently, many of them are not in business today. Now, that's not the only reason some of them are not in business. In other words, if you see an appraiser go out of business in 2023, that doesn't necessarily mean that they cut corners in 2021, 2022. But I know of cases where that was the situation. And so you have to step back a little bit and say, where am I on this spectrum? Because it is a spectrum. Now, again, this is something I've got to be careful with, because people love to take what Dustin Harris says out of context and throw it up on Facebook and say, did you hear what the appraiser coach said about this? He said that you should just be faster at your appraisal reports. And other people jump on there. Well, that's the problem with this industry. We try to cut corners and we try to do things too fast. And as a consequence, we're just all over the place. Well, I will absolutely acknowledge that there is a problem out there with certain appraisers going too quickly, cutting corners, not doing the type of work that they need to do. But I also need to acknowledge, and I think that you need to acknowledge as well, that there is the other side of that spectrum as well. Let me give you an example. I often have Tim Anderson, the appraiser's advocate, here on the program. By the way, if you want to reach out to Tim, it's tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. And he provides a service. It's a service for profit. Okay, you would need to pay for this service, which I did as well, where I sent him several appraisal reports that I had done, randomly chose them, and he went through a process of basically his experience has been on the state board disciplinary side, meaning he's not been on the state board disciplining people that I know of, but he has experienced through his clientele multiple state board cases and lawsuits. Okay, we'll throw that in as well. And so he's a great guy to reach out to say, hey, Tim, I'm in trouble. The state sent me a letter and I need your assistance. I need you to be my advocate, the appraiser's advocate, to help me to be better at what I do, and to help me to get over this letter from the state. Well, one of the other services that Tim provides is to bulletproof, if you will, your report up front. If you'll send him samples, he will go through and he'll say and make suggestions. Say, if I were you, I would change this, I would do this differently. I don't like the way you've done this. I really like this over here, but maybe you should tweak this over here. And I went through that service, and I've shared a little bit about that here before. But just to remind you, or if you're a new listener, by the way, welcome if you are. The experience that I went through was interesting in the sense that what I got back from Tim was a little bit embarrassing, because I think it was like 6 pages of suggestions that he made to me. And I'm like, holy crap, is this normal? He goes, oh yeah, it's very normal. You've only got 6 pages? What about the guy I sent 16 pages to, right? And I said, Tim, let's speak off the record here for a second. By the way, one of the things that Tim will do is he will consult with you after he sends you the results so that you can walk through and go, okay, let's talk about number 3. Like, how do I handle that in the future? And the service is a great service. It's well worth the price that you pay Tim to do this, because what it does is it's improved the quality of my reports, and not just the reports, obviously, of the samples. Those were already done and turned in. It's the future reports that I'm working on. It's my template. It's how I do things, right? And I increase things. Long story short story long. I said to Tim, if I did everything on these 6 pages that you suggest, it's going to take me a week to do a 1004. A cookie cutter 1004 is going to take me a week. And he goes, I know. I said, Tim, I can't do that. I can't make a living if I'm doing one 1004 appraisal for $600 a week. That doesn't pay the bills. And he goes, I know. And I said, Tim, what gives? And he goes, you hired me to point out the flaws. You hired me to point out everything that I think could have been improved with your appraisal reports. Now, let's talk about reality. And then we had a great conversation talking about this efficiency quality balance, right? And in the end, there's some things that I chose to do, and there's some things that I chose not to do. And again, I know by name, they're on the tip right here. If you're on YouTube, you can see them right there on the tip of my tongue, the names of individuals in this industry who I highly respect. And I want to emphasize that, who do spend 10 to 15 hours on every appraisal report that they do. And that is a choice that they make. And again, I respect that. That is a different business model than I have. The honest truth is, individuals who are of that mindset, though I look up to them, they probably could not make a decent living in the AMC world. And most of them don't, by the way. Individuals who are of that mindset, who are high on the quality side, and stay with me. Okay, this is one of those times that you can misconstrue what I'm saying. Okay, I'm talking about the quality efficiency balance. Those that are super high, and I would say even maybe, tip that scale a little too far on the quality side, typically are much better at expert witness stuff, court testimony, consulting, working with government contracts. They're not really fit for the AMC world. And I know many of you are saying, well, Dustin, no duh, because the AMC world dumbs it down. And you're right. Let's just be honest, right? We're talking about the ability to make a living in the AMC world takes a different attitude when it comes to your business. And you've got to decide what that means for you. Now, I would in no way, and Tim would in no way ever discourage you to cut the essentials when it comes to quality. But there is this ability to be able to look at both of those sides and make decisions that will allow you to make a good living, efficiently do appraisal valuation work, and be able to have the quality that you need. When we get back from the break, I want to share with you some of the things that I shared with my coaching client this morning that I think was helpful. She said it was. Now, it's a matter of her now implementing those things, but I want to share, if you are one of these individuals who just takes too damn long in choosing comps or making adjustments or reconciliation, right? I am in no way going to encourage you to cut quality, but I'm going to give you 7 practices, 7 ideas, 7 principles that you can work on and start working on today that I believe will retain the quality and increase efficiency. Another thing that will increase the efficiency is your software. Folks, when you look at a la mode, it's very easy to say, well, a la mode's the most expensive thing out there. Okay. What is your definition of expense? I look at it as the best investment out there. Why? Because I'm always looking for tools, technology that will allow me to be able to do quality work at an efficient rate. And that is what a la mode does for me. It will do it for you as well. Check them out on their website. They've got all kinds of training videos, sales videos. Will show you the cool features that are inside the program, which always increase your efficiency without cutting quality. Alamode.com, or you can pick up the phone, of course, and call them at 800 Alamode. How often do you think about your E&O insurance? I don't think about it very often. Why? I think about it maybe, well, I mean, on the podcast, obviously, I talk about OREP insurance, but when it comes to my actual E&O, I think about it once a year when I renew. Well, I was with OREP many years ago when True Footage purchased my appraisal business. I was super glad to know that they were going to stick with OREP for their entire company. Why? Because it is the best and the benefits are the best. Check them out on their website. You'll find out what I'm talking about by going to orep.org. Let me spell it for you. OREP.org. All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Dustin Harris hanging out with you. And I am going to give you 7 principles today that will help you you've heard it said before, right? Perfection is the enemy of done. What does that mean? Well, sometimes we spin our wheels. And I will say this is, for those of you who are naysayers and for those of you who are hanging on every word and can't wait to get that sound bite out there that says, Dustin says you should cut quality in the name of efficiency. Well, first of all, you're not going to get that sound bite, but could you piece some things together today and get the wrong idea? Sure. That's why in the beginning, sorry for those of you on YouTube, I'm scratching my nose. Somebody's thinking about me. It's very itchy. For those of you out there who think this, again, I go back to the original thing that I said at the top of the program, and that is, please listen all the way through, right? It's so easy to zone in on one phrase or one sentence or one idea and discount everything else that I'm saying out there, okay? I am a huge advocate of quality. I do not believe that you can stay in business as an appraiser long-term, whether it is that you lose your license, you have a lawsuit, you lose clients, or what have you. You lose respect in the industry, right? Those things do and can happen because individuals choose to cut quality. If you do so, folks, right, the things that I'm talking about today are not your friend. My thought today is that you can retain both. You can have a high quality report on one side and be efficient at what you do. Now, part of this, let's just be honest, part of this is personality. Okay, I have a certain personality. I often joke that I'm adult ADD. And when I say joke, I may actually be adult ADD, right? I may actually have attention deficit disorder. By the way, my wife said we don't use that term anymore. I don't know what the PC word is now, but I cannot focus on one thing for very long. I'm an EFTJ, if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, which, if you are familiar, you know what an EFTJ is, you know that there's, attention span is not my high priority. It's not my personality. One of the reasons I didn't go commercial years ago, I had an opportunity to work with a commercial guy for about 2 weeks. I didn't even last the 2 weeks. Because it was very clear to me that I cannot work on one appraisal report for 10 hours or 15 hours or 20 hours or a month or two and enjoy what I do. I'm one that by the time I get to the end of that 1004, I can't wait to get that damn thing done and move on to the next one. Right? That's just my personality. Now, that's not everybody. And part of this, right, it's easy for me to say, well, just get over it. I don't know if you've ever seen the Bob Newhart Just Stop It clip. If you've not seen it, pause, go to YouTube, okay? Type in Bob Newhart Just Stop It and watch that. Okay. It is hilarious, right? And the gist of it is he, I think, plays a therapist, a counselor. Somebody is saying, you know, something that they do over and over and over again. And he says, well, just stop it. That was his solution, right? Just stop it. And part of me says, you know what? If you're spending too much time on an appraisal report, just stop it. Now, I know that's not fair because that may not be your personality. You can't just choose to cut it off and move forward. You cannot just choose to address the situation, make a decision and move on. And that's why I'm going to give you 7 principles that I think will help, okay? Number 1, prioritization of tasks. What do I mean by that? Well, you do need to give attention where things are needed. Prioritization of tasks means that maybe the way that you describe an adjustment you made is not as important as the actual adjustment and the support for that adjustment, okay? The words that you use to describe what you did may not be as important as what you did. Now, again, don't discount what I've said in earlier episodes and what Tim Anderson teaches all the time, and that is tell the story, right? Many mistakes are made because appraisers don't tell the story. They don't describe what they did. It's very important. But again, we're talking about prioritization of tasks. For example, in my opinion, choosing comparables is more important than adjustments. Now, I did not say adjustments are not important. I did not say adjustments shouldn't be given your utmost attention. I absolutely believe that. But prioritization, to me, it's more important that you choose the right comps than you make the right adjustments, okay? So prioritization of tasks might help you when you get bogged down on certain decisions that, let's be honest, they're not as important as other decisions. So prioritization of tasks is number 1. Number 2, embrace your mistakes. It's okay to not have it right. Now, this is the hard one, right? Because the old idea of perfection is the enemy of done is focused on the opposite of what I'm encouraging you to do with number 2. Embrace mistakes basically means you need to get okay with making mistakes. You need to be okay. By the way, this is going to lead to number 7. Okay, so hang on to that thought for just a little bit. A little bit of a different principle when we jump down to number 7. I'm not going to jump there, but just know that number 2 and number 7 are related. Number 2, embrace mistakes, basically meaning it's okay to make them. And I know that's a big no-no out there. Everybody's like, oh, I can't have a mistake on an appraisal report. It might end me in jail. Well, maybe. I doubt it. Again, stay tuned for number 7. Number 3, try practicing decision-making in other aspects of your life. What does that mean, Dustin? Well, that means that in other ways, if you can practice making decisions without getting hung up, because my guess is if you struggle in an appraisal report, there's probably other aspects of your life as well. Maybe you're one, for example, that might go to the restaurant and really have a hard time, especially a new restaurant where you've never tried anything, that you're just agonizing over what to order, right? What is the right decision? Well, again, there may not be a perfect decision. So practice making a decision in that aspect of your life. It might help you when it comes to appraisal as well. Number 4, this is one that I'm going to emphasize because I think number 4 is really, really critical. Okay. When I say it's critical, I mean, if you can do number 4, a lot of times it's going to pull you out of this rut or this pit that you might find yourself in if you feel like you're taking too long in an appraisal report. Number 4, set time limits. Okay. Now I know this is hard. This again goes back to personality, right? You are going to, with every fiber of your being, going to reject number 4 if you are one that struggles with the idea of perfection is the enemy of done. If, for example, you say, okay, I have 45 minutes to choose comps, and if I'm not done in 45 minutes, whatever I have at that point is good enough, and I'm going to take it and I'm going to move on. That is a very hard thing to do, but again, it is a practice that I would encourage you to do. Set time limits. Be realistic, right? 5 minutes for comp selection, probably not going to cut it, okay? Make sure that you set realistic time limits, but what you don't want to do is stretch that 45 minutes of comp selection. I'm just throwing out numbers. I have no idea what the number should be for you, right? But let's say you chose 45 minutes. If you're taking an hour after you've chosen 45 minutes, folks, you're not learning from principle number 4, again, which is set time limits. Number 5, you need to celebrate progress, not just results. Okay. This goes back again. You hear me say this term frequently because it's so important to what we're talking about today. Perfection is the enemy of done. If you can celebrate progress, not just results, perfection has to do with results, right? I created a perfect appraisal report. I turned in a perfect appraisal report. Well, first of all, that doesn't exist. You know that doesn't exist, right? So celebrate progress. For example, stay with me here. Every report that does not come back with a revision or a fair revision, another podcast for another time, but we'll just say it this way. Every report that does not come back is a victory. Every report that does not come back does not mean it was a perfect report, but it should be celebrated. We tend to focus so much on revision. One of the things that happened in my coaching call this morning is we were going through these. The individual on the other end on a Zoom meeting said, well, Dustin, I just agonize over the idea that I might get a revision request. I hate revision requests. They tell me I didn't do good enough. They tell me that I need to now jump back in the report and spend extra time. I would rather get it right. Okay, she used the word right, but really what she was saying was perfect, okay, in her mind. I would rather get it right up front so that I don't have a revision request. And I would say to her, you know what? You can't always do that. So be okay with revision requests. It's okay, right? Now, I know that flies in the face of an earlier podcast that I talked about is get your revision request down because it counts against you twice. It counts against you because the report card will show that you get revisions frequently, and it will also count against you because it will take you longer to complete the report, right? I'm not saying that you celebrate revision requests. I'm saying that if you constantly complete reports in such a way that you are completely paralyzed by the idea of a revision request, then you're going to fall into the category of the individual that I'm talking to today, right? The idea that perfection is keeping you from getting things done. Number 5, get a third-party perspective. It's one of the reasons that I'm so happy for the All-Star team, right? We have a Facebook group that is private. It is by invitation only. It is, you pay to be in the group, okay? Lay everything on the table, Dustin. There's no hiding here. It's $49 a month. And one of the many benefits of the appraisal, the All-Star team at the Appraiser Coach is the ability to be able to be surrounded by like-minded individuals who are not just trying to improve the quality of their business, but also trying to improve the quality of their appraisals. And at least daily, usually a couple of times a day, someone posts on our private Facebook page and says, hey, I'm doing something and I'm stuck. Help me. And within minutes, helpful appraisers are not going to criticize. That's a dumb question. Never happens. Never happens on the Facebook group. Instead, helpful appraisers jump in and say, well, have you thought about this? What about this? How about doing this? Getting a third-party perspective is great, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be an appraiser. Reach out to your spouse. Reach out to a friend. Hey, I'm dealing in a weird situation. What would you do, right? Sometimes that third-party perspective will help. One of the things that happened this morning on the coaching call is this individual shared with me a very specific thing that she was dealing with, a revision. A revision had come in, and she said, what would you do with this? And I said, well, that's an interesting one. I've never really had one quite like that, but I'll tell you, what about this? I think the reason the revision came back, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but I think the revision that came back was because of GSA requirements, not necessarily your appraisal practice, right? Not necessarily. In other words, don't take offense at this. You did everything right, but they wanted it in a little different format. How about you do it this way? And that way you can still be right and provide their format. And she said, interesting. I never thought of it that way. Okay. That doesn't mean Dustin Harris brilliant. I mean, I am, but it doesn't mean that's not necessarily support for that. Oh, my wife would just slap me. It does mean that sometimes just stepping back and allowing someone else to give their opinion may be super, super helpful. All right, number 7, and then we'll wrap up for the day. Again, this one is related to number 2. Number 2 is to embrace mistakes. Number 2 is to be okay with not having it completely right. And number 7 is, please remember this advice that I got a long time ago. And I don't remember who first told it to me, but I've heard it multiple times from multiple people. Okay. And these are people that are respected in the valuation industry. There is no right answers in valuation, just those that can be supported and those that can't. Let me repeat that. There is nothing, I'm going to restate it a little bit differently. There's no such thing as a perfect appraisal report. There is no such thing as the right opinion. And I'm not just talking about the opinion of value, the fact that you say that this house is worth $455,000, right? But there are opinions that can be supported and there's opinions that cannot. Now, stick with me here because I think this is powerful advice if you'll take it in. When you are trying to make a decision when it comes to appraisal, valuation, the practice, whether it be choosing comps, making adjustments, explaining those adjustments, reconciliation, which weight to give which comp and why, remember that there's no such thing as a perfect answer. Choose an answer and make sure that it's supported with data. Let me say it one more time a little bit differently. If you are standing before a state board, okay, and I'm going to throw out Craig Morley's name. Craig, love you, man. And he said this publicly, so I'm not saying anything that he and I have talked about in private. Publicly on this podcast, and I'm paraphrasing, but Craig has been on the Utah State Board at least twice, at least 8 years he spent on the Utah State Board. And he said, Dustin, we saw appraiser after appraiser after appraiser come before the state board. And he said 1 in 100, that's the ratio that he used. 1 in 100, so 1% of the appraisers that came before the state board actually had the answer to, where did you get that adjustment? Beyond, well, that's the way I was taught, or my 30 years of experience says that that's the right adjustment, or, fill in the blank, all the fluff. And here's what he said. And again, I'm paraphrasing. So Craig, jump on, please correct me if I'm wrong, or if I misunderstood what you were characterizing or saying here. But the idea was this. If you're standing before a state board and they ask you a question and you have an answer, it may not be the right answer, but if you have an answer for why you did what you did, you are going to be miles ahead of every other appraiser out there. If you can remember that when you're making a decision and just say, you know what, this may not be the perfect decision, but here's the support that I have behind that decision, I think that will help you to increase your efficiency without cutting your quality. Please don't get yourself down, folks. This comes easier to some than others. Some of this is about an attitude, a personality, right? It comes easier to me than it comes to other people. It comes easier to me than my wife. We have this conversation all the time. She says, well, Dustin, you can make decisions really fast. And she's right. I can. It's not something I've always been good at. It's something I've practiced, right? But I think it naturally comes a little bit better for me. She agonizes, especially over important decisions, agonizes for days and weeks over important decisions. And I'm just like, dude, just make a decision and move. I don't call her dude. Just make a decision and move forward. Sometimes that's what you have to do. Make a decision, be okay with it not being perfect, and move forward. Hope this was helpful to you. Folks, I mentioned the All-Star team. Would love to have you there. We've got a great group of people. We meet every single month for a great webinar and micro-mentorings, coaching in front of other people. We've got the newsletter in both the digital and the audio format. We've got the Facebook group. We've got other discounts to coaching and courses and other things that I provide out there. The members resource library, which is full of stuff. We would love to have you there. Check it out by going to theappraisercoach.com. Again, theappraisercoach.com, and go create some value.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.